By the middle of the decade, the swinging 60s was in its prime. Grand Prix the movie, starring James Garner, was a hit at the box office. England were dreaming of World Cup glory, and the major talking point in Formula One was engines. The 1.5-litre naturally aspirated engine that saw Jim Clark dominate the field in 1965 was replaced with a new, more powerful 3-litre version, 1.5 still, for those of a supercharged persuasion, and boasted a whopping 400 brake horsepower, with top speeds of around 175 miles an hour. It was imaginatively dubbed the 3-litre era, but many fans simply referred to it as the return to power. Jackie Stewart was off to a flyer, winning the season opener and McLaren's debut in the sport at Monaco, in only his second ever Grand Prix victory. Ferrari also started strong with their 312 model, but it was Jack Brabham who ultimately took the big prize, taking advantage of his rival's mechanical misfortunes. He became the first and only driver to win the World Drivers' Championship and Constructors' Championship in a car bearing his own name. 1967 began where 66 left off. 3-litre engines were now the staple diet of most teams across the grid. And whilst Brabham Repco was still the car to beat, Ford, with their naturally aspirated Cosworth DFV engine in the Lotus, had entered the sport and set their sights on chasing them down. Whilst Denny Hulme, aka the Bear, ultimately enjoyed the spoils of the World Drivers' Championship despite only 2 wins from 11 races and no pole positions, the season was overshadowed by the death of Lorenzo Bandini at Monaco.
That has been dropping back. Terribly hard race even to finish, Phil, isn't it?
Really.
Chasing down Hulme for the win, Bandini entered the harbour chicane and lost control of his Ferrari 312. Hitting the straw bales, the car flipped upside down and caught fire, trapping Bandini underneath. He made it to hospital, but his injuries proved too severe. 3 days later, the 31-year-old was pronounced dead at Princess Grace Hospital in Monaco. His death, thankfully, led to much-needed safety changes in the sport. Most notably, straw bales were banned, and it was the last time that a TV crew's helicopter would be allowed to fly low after an accident. Then came 1968, and with it wings, sponsors, and tragically, more fatalities. The first team to kit out their car in a sponsor's livery was Team Gunston, a South African privateer team who, at the South African Grand Prix, painted their car the orange of Gunston cigarettes. In the next round, at the Spanish Grand Prix, Lotus became the first works team to follow suit. The Lotus 49B pressed and dressed in the red, white and gold of Imperial Tobacco's gold leaf brand. Colin Chapman also pioneered front and rear wings on the 49B at Monaco. Fans watched on in awe as Graham Hill roared to victory in the first ever Formula One car to feature the new aerodynamics. Brabham and Ferrari quickly followed suit, with full-width wings mounted on struts high above the driver. Whilst the championship belonged to Graham Hill, Jim Clark dominated the headlines. At Hockenheim, the 2-time world champion tragically lost his life during a Formula 2 race. His death sent shockwaves through the sport. A driver whom El Maestro himself, Juan Manuel Fangio, said was the greatest to do it. Jim Clark was known as one of the safest and most skilled drivers on the grid. 3 months later, at the French Grand Prix, French driver Joe Schlesser met with the same fate, in only his 3rd race in Formula One. As the decade reached its conclusion in 1969, something had to change. That something was Jackie Stewart. After his own near-fatal accident in 1966, the Scot began campaigning for racetrack barriers and improved safety. By the Spanish Grand Prix of that year, for the first time, the governing bodies finally started to take notice. Crash barriers were installed and soon after began appearing at all major race circuits. The wee Scot himself went on to claim his first World Drivers' Championship and began cementing his legacy as a true pioneer of the sport. Oh, and a young man called Frank Williams thought that it might be fun to have a go at this racing lark. Despite the already tireless efforts from Jackie Stewart, little did he know his work was far from over. 1970 should have been a time for celebration and renewed optimism as the sport entered its third decade. Tragically, it was about to enter one of its darkest hours. On the 2nd of June, the sport mourned one of its own. Bruce McLaren tragically lost his life, aged just 32, during a test session at Goodwood, when the rear bodywork of his Can-Am car completely detached, causing a catastrophic loss of downforce. He was killed instantly. On the 21st of June, British driver Piers Courage also lost his life at the Dutch Grand Prix at Zandvoort. The suspension on his De Tomaso 505 broke. The car rode the embankment and disintegrated. He was killed instantly. And finally, on the 5th of September, Austrian driver Jochen Rindt was fatally injured during qualifying when the brakes on his Lotus 72 failed, steering him into the barriers. Unlike Piers and Bruce, he made it to the ambulance, but was pronounced dead en route to hospital. Rindt remains the only driver in Formula One history to win the World Drivers' Championship posthumously, dominating the field and winning the last 4 races prior to his death. 1970 wasn't a year to forget, it was a year to learn, adapt and change. For one man, safety was now priority one. Change wasn't an option, it was essential. And by 1971 he had the bit between his teeth, ready to light the red touch paper on and off the track. Jackie Stewart grabbed 1971 by the scruff of its neck, winning 6 of the 11 races that season. Monaco, undoubtedly his finest hour. Despite forgetting his undershirt on the grid, the Scot went on to win by more than 25 seconds, setting multiple lap records on his way to an all-time best, more than a second quicker than the previous mark. By Austria, he was crowned World Drivers' Champion for the second time and steered Tyrrell to their first and only Constructors' Championship. His remarkable record still ranks him as one of the most successful Formula One drivers of all time. As we head into the unknown of the next 7.5 decades, having thankfully not lost a driver for over a decade, and prior to Jules Bianchi, not since the late great Ayrton Senna in 1994, one thing is for sure. Our drivers now step into their cars to do battle for the greatest honour in motorsport safer, thanks in no small part to the one and only Jackie Stewart.